Welcome to Update by Vegconomist. My name is Nadine Filko, and I'm happy to navigate you through the next 45 minutes of knowledge seeking. Today, I actually faced a double disappointment. I went out for lunch and I was served the wrong dish with ingredients I actually really didn't want to eat. I ate it anyway because I didn't want to waste the food. And then I had to pay money. I actually didn't have money for going out to eat. So it was, disappointing all the way, although I actually wanted to treat myself. Food service is at the heart of bringing food and emotions together. Of course, and hopefully not disappointment, but also satisfaction and joy. So let's talk about food service having a superpower. Welcome, Marika Azov, Corporate Engagement Lead of the Good Food Institute, Daniel Polter, Senior Manager, Corporate Affairs and Sustainability at Burger King Germany, and Dr. Joanna Treverne, Director of Partnerships at ProVeg International. I'm really looking forward to the conversation today about food service and the superpower and everything you have to tell us about what happens at the moment at the market. Marika, would you jump in and tell us a bit about your work and maybe the hottest topic out there at the moment?
Awesome. Hi, thanks so much for having me. Marika Azov, I work at the Good Food Institute, as Nadine said. For those of you who aren't familiar with GFI, is what I'll call it for short, we're an international philanthropically funded nonprofit. We're really focused on advancing alternative proteins, plant-based proteins, fermentation-derived, cultivated. For the sake of today, we're talking about plant-based, but focused on advancing these proteins as an essential solution we need to meet the world's climate, global health, food security, biodiversity, etc. Goals. We work with scientists, we work with policymakers, we work with the for-profit sector, all with the goal of making these proteins as delicious, affordable, nutritious, and accessible as possible. I've been with the organization for 4 years. I've worked with a lot of different stakeholder groups in the for-profit sector. Currently, I lead GFI US's initiatives with food service companies and culinary organizations. So I work with major US food service companies and other influential culinary bodies to inspire and accelerate their shift towards plant-based and other alternative proteins. I will say, I know we have an international audience here. GFI is an international nonprofit. We have folks working across Asia Pacific region, India, Brazil, Europe, Israel, Japan. We're continuing to expand. So I do come with kind of a US-centric lens. I'm very aware of what's going on in Europe as well, but I am the kind of one person at GFI who's solely focused on food service. So definitely excited. I think I'm excited for this conversation to also learn more from my co-panelists about what they're excited about in Europe. And yeah, I think to answer your question, I'm seeing a trend towards more partnerships between chefs and plant-based companies. And I know we're going to get a little bit more into the importance of those partnerships, but that's something that I am very excited about.
Thank you so much for these first hints at what we're definitely going to talk about. Daniel, can you give us a bit more information about your work and what you're doing, and maybe already jump in there and tell us, are you cooperating with any plant-based company?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me. I'm Daniel. I'm with Burger King Germany. We consider ourselves the plant-based leader in German QSR. And I think also on an international level, Burger King has there as a very role model within the plant-based segment internationally and globally in the QSR industry. I'm with the Burger King Germany team for now 4.5 years, and one of my major first projects was the thing you see behind me. It was the worldwide first Burger King store that only served plant-based patties for a week, which was a major success. And we did it in cooperation with our partner, the Vegetarian Butcher, that provide us with plant-based patties and nuggets, and with whom we have had a very fruitful partnership for now more than 5 years, or even 6 years in Germany, Europe, and even other markets around the world. I'm very intrigued to talk more about how we can really excite and inspire the great majority of people to try out plant-based products, especially those who consider themselves flexitarians, who want to really reduce their meat intake and have a more conscious consumption of meat. And I think there is a big lever that we need to find and yeah, make them happy of consuming more and more plant-based products.
Definitely one big task, one gateway to the market, food service. Joanna, what is your work about at the moment? Can you give us some insights on what you're working on and maybe the hottest topic for you out there at the moment?
Yes, of course. Thank you. So hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Joanna Truan, and I'm the Director of Partnerships at ProVeg. So what I do is look across our international network. We have offices all across Europe, but also in China, South Africa, Malaysia, Nigeria, Brazil. And I look across our regions to understand where we can leverage the power of partnerships to drive accelerated progress toward our mission, which is really about driving this transition toward a more plant-rich food system for the benefits of all the things that we know about here in this group today, from human health to taste and increased consumer choice, biodiversity, climate, economy, basically a more resilient world for us all and a better future. So that's a bit about what I do at ProVeg, and really our role as an international NGO within this food service space is to give guidance to companies on how they can maximize the opportunities that come from incorporating more plant-based products into their portfolio and food offer, but also to really help them understand how to adapt to incoming policy changes and how they can really be at the forefront of this shift that we're seeing in consumer demand and an increased demand for plant-based products. So that's what we do. We have a range of programs around the world that are all obviously context and market dependent that really help to drive that transition forwards.
You've all touched so many topics, all right, and I would love to jump into the biggest hurdles for food service, because you already said like politics out there, you try to help them adapt. What other hurdles are there actually, and what are strategies to cope with them? Joanna, maybe you want to go in first?
Yeah, happy to. So I think the first one that may not seem immediately obvious, but is a big challenge, is that food service companies can do some amazing work to improve their menus and their food offer, but actually that doesn't always translate directly into consumer choice. So just by introducing more plant-based options to the menu and reducing the emissions associated with the menu doesn't mean definitely that a food service company can reduce its emissions to the extent that it would like to, or can kind of drive that change at scale in consumer choice. So I think that's the challenge, is we're seeing progressive food service companies kind of already making these changes, introducing new choices, using great language to promote them, changing the dining environment to support consumers. But we need more there, basically. We need more energy behind that, and more of a concerted effort, I think, from food service companies, but also civil society and policy, to be able to really make that transition happen at scale and at pace. So I think that's quite a big hurdle. And I think the other challenge that food service companies have is that I'm talking more about contract caterers here, but typically they have to cope with very, very different markets, right? So consumer preferences and food culture in a place like Brazil has nothing to do with consumer preferences and culture in somewhere like the Netherlands or the UK. So having to deal with kind of those different preferences is a challenge, and also building up the supply of different alternative and plant-based proteins to the scale that's needed to supply these markets is another challenge that I'm often asked about how to deal with.
Marika, is there anything you would add?
Yeah, I second those. I think also price tends to be a challenge. You know, the plant-based industry, even though it feels like it's been around forever, is still very much a nascent one, and supply chains are still scaling, and often these ingredients and finished products are still sold at a premium. So figuring out how to, you know, charge a reasonable price for a dish and also be profitable is a challenge that food service companies can face. And yeah, consumer demand, I think, is like the biggest one. Are consumers going to buy it? And so much goes into that: price, taste, and yeah, how the dishes are positioned, the nomenclature, lots of great research on that. I'm a big fan of kind of the default plant-based approach, using kind of little nudges to nudge consumers in the direction of choosing plant-based proteins, whether it be where it's placed on a menu, the portion, you know, a portion of the plant-based kind of ingredient compared to the animal-based one. So yeah, I think there's a lot of cool tools and mechanisms that food service companies can institute. But I agree, there needs to be kind of the reason why GFI as one organization is working on policy, science and technology, and corporate engagement is because it has to be a concerted effort among the three to really increase consumer demand, increase availability and appeal of these products, bring down price, increase incentives, etc.
Daniel, how are you coping with those challenges? How did you do it? Like, you're a best practice actually. You want to tell us a bit more about that?
Sure. So when we talk about hurdles, I think it's about affordability, availability, and this, the third one is a taste. So at Burger King Germany, we started our plant-based journey back in 2019, when on a global level we transferred our iconic Whopper in a plant-based version and introduced it to the different markets as back then the Rebel Whopper, which is now the plant-based Whopper. And since then, less than 6 years, we've extended our portfolio and the variety of food so much. And in all the German Burger King restaurants, you can actually get a plant-based burger. Actually, almost every burger or sandwich also in a plant-based version, which is tackling this availability issue. So you have, if you come to Germany and you're craving for good food, which is plant-based, you're more than welcome in one of our 750 restaurants. And in terms of affordability, from the very beginning, and I mean, it was a USP within the German QSR market, we decided to have the same price tag on our plant-based products and on the meaty ones, which was kind of also a statement not making them more expensive than the plant-based, than the meaty products, despite just us offering plant-based products at all in the QSR segment. And since last year, actually, we offer our plant-based products 10 cents cheaper than their meaty alternatives. So if you ask for a plant-based Whopper in a German Burger King restaurant, it costs 10 cents less than the one with the beef patty, which I think it's a great initiative in order to make people curious to really try them out and find out for themselves what they're gonna choose the next time. And I think one of the key aspects which you haven't touched upon yet, is the taste. So I can have the cheapest plant-based products, I can have all the portfolio in plant-based, but if it doesn't taste great, and if it doesn't give me the same flavor as I'm used to, I won't eat it again. So making people curious is one thing, making people or helping them to feel convinced and delighted by the plant-based products is another thing. And in my personal view, and I can tell from our side in cooperation with our friends from the Vegetarian Butcher, we are continuously improving our plant-based products on the taste side, on how it's appealing, etc. So it's a continuous journey which has led us to really, really great tasting products. And I kindly call upon you, just try them out yourselves and be curious and find them in your local Burger King restaurant, or even better in Germany at one of ours.
What I get so far from the conversation, those are somehow, sorry to say it, like these no-brainers, like we need good taste, we need a good price. And my feeling is we are at some point, we have got these things at the market. I mean, of course, we are talking from our bubble and we see, okay, we have the development. So what is food service 2.0 then? I mean, if we still don't get out there to all of the consumers and we see it's not enough, what is the next step here? This is a bit of a challenging question, but it's just I have the feeling we're like kind of stuck a bit. How about you?
I think we've reached already a great status at the moment. So in Germany, at least, given again 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we just introduced the very first plant-based Whopper. We've reached a level of, let's say, 1 in 5 Whopper sandwiches in Germany are sold in a plant-based version, more or less. So that's enormous. And when we introduced in 2021 or 2022 our plant-based long chicken, which is only 3 years ago, we now have 1 in 4 sandwiches being sold. So that's actually quite a great level in my view. And what we are trying to do is continuously communicating about it, just making it as normal as possible to have not only the beef or chicken product out there, but also like the plant-based version, and just making it as normal as possible within the conversation, and bringing incentives out there in order to make people trying them out, because we are convinced they are great tasting, and everybody should try them out and decide for themselves.
Yeah, I think, and it's, there are nuances in the different markets. I wish that I don't know Burger King sales data for the US, but Europe sales data is there's a rosier picture there than the US right now. And I think that it comes down to the value proposition of plant-based meat. Is it enough for it to taste the same, be priced the same, and be as accessible? Is that going to motivate a flexitarian or someone to make the swap if it's just the same? Or what does a plant-based dish, a plant-based food have that is better than? And right, often that is kind of the health proposition. We know some consumers, not the majority of them, are sustainability driven. So we're really figuring out what that kind of lever is for different consumers that's going to motivate them to make that switch. And I think we talk about the flexitarian consumer as like one person, but the flexitarian consumers fall into many different buckets. And I'm excited. GFI just conducted a consumer segmentation study to really look at the plant-based consumer, that that flexitarian / plant-based consumer, those consumers who are eating some plant-based meat, to kind of bucket them. We bucketed them into 6 categories. I think the report is coming out at the end of March, hopefully. Stay tuned to understand the unique drivers of each different kind of category of consumers, so that rather than just trying to target anyone who might ever be interested in plant-based foods, companies can get a little bit more targeted with their marketing. So I'm excited about kind of companies diving into that research and figuring out what is that lever that they can pull for their specific consumers. I also want to see more sampling. I think sampling goes a long way in terms of consumer trial. You know, it's a big deal if you you know, have limited funds and you want to go out to a restaurant to try something new. So the more we can, you know, provide free samples and ensure that those samples are cooked to perfection and consistent, the better. So yeah, stay tuned for that report.
Yep. Definitely. But are restaurants, is food service in general open for, you know, providing any samples? How do we get their trust to try those? How do you approach food service? What are the ways to bringing this in there?
How do I approach food service companies when I'm working with them? Is that the question? Yeah, it depends on the company. I think, you know, a lot of companies, less so in the US, but a lot of companies do have sustainability goals. We have a lot of consumer research and data that does show consumer interest. So sharing that with them, you know, helping them understand, especially, I mean, depending on who their target demographic is, but just kind of the next generation, the next generations and their interest in plant-based foods. We see across the board the younger generations, you know, have more interest in eating plant-based, and not all of those consumers have come into their buying power yet. So we want to help ready food service companies for those consumers. And you know, I think there are some really great case examples and success stories that we use to, like, such as the default approach, seeing just like such success with sales in those case studies. For those of you who haven't checked out Greener by Default's work, or the Better Food Foundation, they have a lot of great case examples. So just kind of showing the evidence of consumer demand, and helping to really share those marketing, messaging, best practices. It's definitely harder now than it was a couple of years ago. So I'm not pretending that it's all rosy, but really helping companies understand all of the data and research so that they can figure out what's best for their business model.
Joanna, is there anything such as a roadmap also for food service, a first step, something they can do if they, like, I've got a restaurant now and I'm like, I want to change. I want to have 50% plant-based. How do I do it? Like, is there something you can tell the audience?
Yeah, so I think it's very important for companies to have access basically to that type of guidance so they can understand where to start. So, for example, we do a number of different things. The first one is that in the Netherlands, we work with something called the Protein Tracker. And this year we're working with 6 major caterers in the Netherlands. And what we're trying to understand is how much or what are the volumes of animal protein and plant-based protein that they're procuring. So really establishing a baseline and then looking at how they can start to move towards the government target basically in the Netherlands, which is to get to a 50-50 animal plant protein split by 2030. So we're working with caterers there to help them build their baseline, understand where their hotspots are, and then through that data, identify what kind of strategies they can implement to help actually rebalance their animal and plant protein procurement. So that's kind of quite a data heavy, looking at what they're procuring and how we could impact that approach. The other kind of approach that we take is working very practically with chefs and with staff that work in dining environments. So in the UK, we have a school food programme called School Plates. And through that programme, we provide caterers with guidance basically on what they can do to their menus, what kind of language they can use, what changes they might be able to make to the dining environment to help nudge children towards more plant-based choices. But the bit that's my favorite, I think, is that we provide that environment where we work practically with the chefs to help them develop and test with children these more plant-based options. Because anyone that has children will know that the taste is the key thing, right? Like even more so than with adults. So it becomes really important to ensure that they're developing meals that the children are going to eat and are going to enjoy. So yeah, we kind of have different options that we develop through that program. And what's super exciting is that we've been able to swap 47 million meals since we started doing that work in the UK. And the feedback that we get from children, from parents, and from others in the schools is that the satisfaction is very high, which is a really important thing for us to be able to then show back to the food service companies that there is that demand for these more plant-based options.
Yeah, if they're not satisfied, they're not going to eat it again, definitely. So we actually see there is a lot happening out there. Daniel, is there any next step for you as Burger King? How are you, tackling the problems we still have at the market? And I know many people say Germany is quite far, but there's still a lot to do. Like, are you maybe trying to change more of your food also?
Yeah,
take the next step?
So what we've done at the moment is that you can get almost every burger in a plant-based version, or change the patty to a plant-based patty. What we are also doing, but not actively communicating so much, is like veganizing sauces, for example. So which will also extend the portfolio for those that really don't want to have any animal protein within the final burger sandwich. And furthermore, we are obviously continuously, as I stated already, continuously improving the taste of our product. So in the last couple of years, we've already switched the appearance of the products to make them even more distinguishable for our colleagues within the kitchen, but explicitly also for our guests that have asked for the burger, so they can tell themselves that it's actually a plant-based burger or plant-based patty and not a beef patty. Within the plant-based nuggets and plant-based long chicken patty, for example, we've introduced parsley into the coating. So if it has little greenish snippets in there, you can be sure that it's a plant-based product. And that's something we obviously communicate about and educate people about. But in the end, we want to offer choice, and that's and options to our guests. So we are not advocating for plant-based, against plant-based, for beef, for chicken, or so on. But we offer great tasting products, and our endeavor is to have the best tasting plant-based products in the market. And we will get to the next level within the next 6 months or so. So we will introduce a even better tasting plant-based patty in the German market, which we are really very much curious and looking forward to introduce to the market.
If I may. I think Danielle, introduced a really important idea and tool, which is like it's a big ask to have a consumer switch from a full, conventional burger to plant-based burger. But where are those little levers? Where are those ingredients that can be easily veganified or plant-basedified, whatever word you want to use, without tricking consumers, being very clear about allergens and what's in the products, but that are just less of an ask. So sauces is a great one. We know that plant-based milks have performed very well for years. So shakes, like, can we make plant-based shakes the default? And then also combining, like blending animal products with plant-based ingredients. So we're seeing more companies kind of embrace this blended meat, balanced meat is a term that's been used as well, model where you're incorporating plant-based ingredients, whether it's pea protein or peas, into animal-based meat products. And we've seen successes, and Purdue has a chicken nugget that's called Chicken Plus that's performing very well, geared towards kids, a way to get your veggies in while in a chicken nugget, which is, you know, one of the most delicious things in the world. So finding, ways to decrease the ask on consumers, and still increase the prevalence of plant-based ingredients, I think is a really key one.
I think as well that the benefit you get from that approach is you often can deliver improvements from a nutrition perspective. So when you're adding, you know, a vegetable or a plant protein, you're adding fiber, for example. So it becomes a really practical thing for companies to do, but that also actually you can communicate clear benefits to the consumer around nutrition.
Now, Daniel said they actually don't, you know, promote either or. Is this actually a problem? Do we need food service to be advocates for a different food system and go? I mean, I know you're changing it, but I do have to ask, do they even have to say, okay, we want you to eat plant-based? How far are we away from this?
I think it's a question of how do you define promoting. So, for example, if you go at our self-order terminals and you order a beef Whopper, you're gonna get asked if you want to have the beef Whopper or plant-based Whopper. If you go to order directly a plant-based Whopper, you are not asked if you want to have it as a beef version. So I think these are the tiny little steps that make people aware of plant-based, because obviously, as again, it's a plant-based Whopper is cheaper than a beef Whopper sandwich. So you actually make people aware of plant-based, one, and second, that's even cheaper. So, but I'm happy to live in a society where people have the free choice in all matters or in most matters. So I think that's kind of a little nudging, which helps, but still gives the sovereignty to the people, to the guests, that they can decide themselves what they want.
I also wonder, you know, I think we need restaurants, food service establishments for everyone, different ones for everyone. And I wonder, you know, we need fully plant-based restaurants. We need restaurants that have plant-based options. And I think those subtle promotions that you're speaking to are really powerful, because if the promotion is too loud, then it's not, you're gonna, you know, prevent those flexitarian consumers. You're going to put them off, and they might not come in the door, and then they might not be given the opportunity to try a plant-based option that you have so easily offered them. So yeah, I think there's value in having all different models, but we definitely need food service establishments that are, you know, not loudly promoting plant-based. That's my opinion.
So that has to come from the inside somehow. You're working together with chefs, and soon are going to have something such as a roadmap. Do you want to, or please correct me if I said it wrong, but would you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite parts of my work is working with chefs and culinarians in general, because I've just seen this disconnect between, you know, plant-based companies and chefs. Often plant-based companies kind of start out as food tech companies, and you know, there's lots of different kinds of them, but some of them come off as very flashy and food techy. And at the end of the day, food is emotional, it's cultural. Chefs are artists, and you know, chef is a very broad category. You can have everyone from a chef working in R&D to a Michelin star chef to a chef in a QSR. So it's hard to talk about them so generally. But I do see a lot of value in educating chefs and helping them understand opportunities in alternative proteins and plant-based proteins, the value of them, and also in educating kind of the plant-based producers on how to approach them and how to work with them. So we are developing a short resource geared toward plant-based and other alternative protein companies to just help them understand how to communicate effectively with chefs. So I'm excited that will be published later in the year. And yeah, I think I can speak to some of the takeaways, but I also know we're running out of time. So I think it's just really important to keep that conversation going between and like bridge that gap between the culinary world and the plant-based producers, because they're the ones putting the products on plates.
Joanna, how is this for you? Like, I mean, we all have different countries we're working in. Do you see this as a problem, like techie plant-based companies and chefs getting together to change things? And which role does making them just use more plant-based ingredients play? Is it really, that's the question I always ask myself, is it really about taking the meat out, putting in something like a replacement, or is it more about changing the way they're using food and maybe even learning it that way? I know we have in Germany there is you can learn to be a vegan chef, for example.
Yeah, so I think this looks different in different markets. So in Germany now, we are looking at how we work in basically the culinary schools to basically increase awareness and understanding of how to work with plant-based ingredients, but also an understanding of why that's important. So broader implications and benefits for the food system. And that's very different to the approach we're taking in Belgium and the Netherlands, where, for example, we're looking more at collecting data in hospitals on what food is being consumed and then using that to understand how to improve the hospital food offer. So it just depends a bit on, I think, the market opportunities, but also the kind of political, social, consumer developments in each market and what's the most relevant strategy to kind of implement, basically. But we spoke a little bit about Foodservice 2.0 and this kind of what role should food service companies play in driving, I guess, this more cultural shift, right? Where people are more understanding of the need to shift to a more plant-rich food system and really want to see that happen. And I agree with what Daniel was saying around food service needing to provide choice and to really make it affordable, accessible and appealing for people to choose these options. I do think there's a really important and overlooked role sometimes for policymakers and broader civil society when it comes to, well, actually, what's the food culture that we want to create and want to build? And that's not just the job of companies. In fact, consumers broadly, if you look at insights, consumer surveys, they want companies to make these choices easy for them, but they don't want companies to tell them what to eat, right? They would much rather listen to their doctors and to other trusted messengers when it comes to, well, what should I be choosing and putting in, in eating on a daily basis. So I think this cultural shift is the bit that maybe we haven't really as a sector kind of unlocked yet. If food service companies are there making it easy and appealing for consumers, then how can they collaborate maybe, or what's their role in working with some of these trusted messengers, in putting asks forward to policymakers on things like public procurement, where we know there's going to be some opportunity coming this year, particularly in Europe. So yeah, it's what Marika, you were saying earlier, really, like how do these different actors really come together so that we accelerate this transition and really get the buy-in of consumers and communities, really.
And I think in order to reach that goal of shifting the food industry in that sense, it's very important to shift the narratives. So particularly in Germany, or I only know about Germany, it's it's sacred to say something about the German sausage, yeah. And if you want to promote something in plant-based, there are many people out there really becoming very loud, and it's always about them thinking people want to take them something away. And the discussion becomes very emotional about freedom, freedom of choice. And so people are not really looking more and more into the opportunity and the good advantages of plant-based. So recently, only 1 or 2 weeks ago, there was a publication about how the alternative protein segment in Germany could start about 250,000 jobs within the German industry. So a very other narrative that people had to think about and start talking about the opportunity of that alternative segment as a industry and not only about ideology. So that's I think something every actor, every stakeholder needs to discuss as well. It has a huge impact not only on what we have on our plates, but also on how and where we gonna work. And I think that's another narrative that makes it less ideological and more as looking at it as a great opportunity for us as society.
Definitely. Do we have something such as a fatigue out there also? Because you're talking about ideology, not everybody wants that, and we're all a bit tired of talking about plant-based and sustainability. And yeah, any thoughts on this? And also, when looking at our time, any last things you want to tell the audience out there about food service and the future of their impact on the market?
Maybe just adding on your question, what we do at Burger King Germany is always communicating in a fun way. So people can identify and understand, yes, it's Burger King and it's fun and it's about taste. It's not about ideology and I can have whatever I want to have, but it's going to be a fun product which tastes great. What's also the case during Veganuary, where we offered a king rib and communicated it in a very special way in order to make people aware of it and make people trying them out. So you don't only have to finger point at how good and sustainable or more sustainable a plant-based is. It just needs to be fun. And I think thereby you can convince many people trying them out.
Marika.
Yeah, I mean, food service is is so powerful. You know, it's where so much trial occurs. And there's so many opportunities to ensure that a consumer's first experience trying plant-based food is phenomenal. And that kind of like first trial, initial impression is really important. So yeah, I think I'm very optimistic. I'm very excited about the role that food service plays in plant-based adoption and increased adoption. We have a lot of work to do, and yes, maybe some dipping markets and fatigue around sustainability and plant-based terminology. But if we just think, like, zoom out and think about like the systems that we are trying to better, like half of the world's habitable land almost is used for agriculture. Making change to our global food system is a huge process and one that takes time. So I'm just so encouraged by all of the people on this call, probably a lot of the attendees, brilliant folks dedicating their careers to bettering our food systems in this way. And don't lose hope. It takes a while, but we certainly haven't. And stay tuned for that consumer segmentation report. I think it's going to be really fun.
So, I mean, I think a lot of progress has been made in the retail sector on this kind of concept of the protein transition. We haven't quite seen that, I don't think, yet in terms of the food service sector, although there are some brilliant examples. Obviously, everything Daniel's told us today in terms of what Burger King is doing in Germany. Sodexo in the US, I would say, is a leader in this space and doing loads of brilliant work. but we need to make sure that we all kind of work to establish a vision, basically, for food service and how they can play a meaningful role in this transition to more plant-rich diets and a more plant-rich food system. And 20% of all the meals we eat are eaten at home. So I think that's just a reminder for all of us how important it is to engage this sector and provide them with the support and guidance that they need to be able to make a change in amongst all the busy stuff that they've got going on in their day-to-day lives.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining this conversation. I have hope, definitely, and I'm looking forward and have the vision of my next food eating. I'm going to have for lunch, hopefully not the wrong this time, the wrong one, the wrong dish. Yeah, thank you out there for listening to us. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Which-Conomist, and I hope you have been updated. And do not miss our next session on March 20th.